Right now, many members of Congress are still looking for answers on the strike by the U.S. military on the boat, the Venezuelan boat. They're asking what was in the boat and who were these people? Were they terrorists, as the president alleges? And was that attack really self defense when it's been reported, first by the New York Times, that that boat turned around? We also know that Nicolas Maduro, the president of Venezuela, the U.S. has put a $50 million bounty on his head based on narco terrorism charges. So I'm interested in understanding this from the intelligence perspective. What are Venezuela's intelligence services doing? Uh, Frankly, it's not an area that I would naturally be covering. So I turned to a woman named Cris Matei. She is an expert in Latin American intelligence services, and she's also a teacher at the Naval Postgraduate School, and she co-edited a book that came out last year. It's called The Handbook of Latin American and Caribbean Intelligence Cultures. So she tells me that, no surprise, Venezuela's intelligence services are there to protect Maduro and the regime, to keep him in power. She described how they have worked with the Ministry of Interior to tamp down violence that could threaten the regime, to neutralize political opponents, to spy on members of the media. She talked about how there is politicization. She also described how they're in quote unquote survival mode, that they are competing for resources, power, and attention, as is often the case with populist countries. So let's just go through some of these agencies. By the way, though, I should also mention that they aren't just looking internally. Cris describes how they have an eye outside of their own countries. They're certainly looking at the United States. And so let's go into some of these agencies. First off, as she tells me, there is what's called DGIM. That is the Directorate of General Military Intelligence. And she says that they get a lot of support from Cuba. The Venezuelans will actually go to Cuba to receive training. The Cubans will do the training on Venezuelan soil. And she says that, at least in the past few years, Cuban intelligence officers have been on the payroll of various organizations in Venezuela. She also says that there is a counterintelligence entity within this directorate, and that is called DGCIM. Second, there is the police intelligence. This is called DISIP, DISIP, and they are concerned with domestic issues, but they are also looking at criminal activities. Third is an intelligence service within the Ministry of Justice that she says is concerned with jails. And of course, we know that political opponents and Americans in the past few years have spent time in these prisons. And last but not least is what's called SABINE. This stands for the Bolivarian National Security Service. This is their premier intelligence service, Cris tells me. It lives under the vice president, and it also has its own sort of CIA component where they operate abroad. So, who are their allies in the region? Which countries are they sharing intelligence with? Well, this starts with the key members of the ALBA, the member states from the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America. These are countries that share similar ideologies. And she says that the key members are not just Venezuela, but also Bolivia and Nicaragua. So likely that they are sharing intelligence. And they also get support from further away, and you can guess which countries this would be. I wonder if I can even have anybody in the notes kind of just shout it out right now. But who is it? Well, it's Russia and it's China. They provide military education, they provide training, and they provide equipment, Cris says, which she believes shows that there's also intelligence ramifications there. So I'm hoping to get more into this next week. What a crazy week it's been for national security news. So much to cover that I honestly spent part of this week just sitting there devastated. And meanwhile, I'm at a conference, so I'm in the midst of just absorbing so much information. And by the way, at that conference, I reported on some new images and video that lawyers representing 9/11 families have put forward for a lawsuit to allege that Saudi government officials were involved in the 9/11 attacks. If you haven't checked that out yet, definitely look at it. I think it's from Wednesday. What I did find out, though, recently was that there was a spy under diplomatic cover who was actually sitting in that crowd with myself and the others who were there, including US government officials, former officials, experts in the counterterrorism community and the extremism community. And this guy was sitting there, apparently taking pictures of every single image. It's interesting because, of course, while this litigation is underway, the Saudis have access to this information. But what I heard is this person is going to write up a report, also share any information on people that he spoke with at the conference. And this is not very uncommon. It's actually quite common for spies to attend these conferences to understand what some of the policies are, what people's stances are, who the important players and voices that could be influential are, develop relationships, perhaps elicit information, perhaps go and try to recruit people later. So, not unusual. Anyway, it's Friday, and let's all take a deep breath. And if you are enjoying my exclusive reporting and my original reporting, then please consider becoming a paid subscriber so that I can keep doing all of this work. And remember to take care of yourself this weekend. And I guess I'll be seeing you on Monday.